Where are we at in society today? Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Every single week, I put my freaking heart and soul into this. I don't go out there and laugh. It's not funny. It's not fun. Nothing's funny to me. I don't want to go out there and get embarrassed on Monday Night Football in front of everybody.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So ain't nothing changed from yesterday. Still the same person I was yesterday. And I got the same thing for you that I had yesterday. You know why I'm here.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
It's okay. I know how you're feeling right now. It's okay. It's a Monday. It's off a rare Lions loss, and you're not quite sure how to react. And I get it. Welcome, everybody, to X's and Bros throughout the great state of Michigan, with you Monday through Friday, 6 until 9. I'm Matt Shepard. Trent Bally is our producer, and the Meyer hotline is 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Lions fall to the Bills, 48-42. Jared Goff becomes the first quarterback to throw for over 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and lose. Detroit's now 12-2, tied with Philly, who beat Pittsburgh yesterday in an impressive display. But the Lions still hold the number 1 seed in the NFC because they have a better conference record with 3 conference games left. Philly also has 3 conference games left. For Detroit, it's at Chicago, it's at San Francisco, it's home to Minnesota, who plays Chicago tonight. For Philadelphia, it is a little different scenario, but a more winnable scenario. They've got a couple of road games, and they've got a home game as well. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But overall, 12-2, you'd take it after 14 weeks. Most people would. Bears take on the Vikings tonight. They're going to close out week 15. Chiefs are the league's number 1 overall seed because they improved to 13-1 with a roadkill in Cleveland. Pistons are going to host Miami tonight. Detroit is 6 games under 500. They have lost 7 of their last 10. The Heat have won 4 straight and sit 5th in the East. Here's our poll question. What is the biggest reason for the Lions' loss on Sunday? Was it the Lions' defense? Was it the poor Lions' running game? Was it Dan Campbell? Or was it Josh Allen? You can vote as often as you like, and you can do so on our Twitter page at XB Mornings. I'll retweet it as always at Shep Matt. So it's the second loss of the year for Detroit, both losses at home, both to division leading teams, both to what assumes will be playoff bound teams. That shouldn't make it any easier. And there are some things that you recognized last night in the loss that might have you troubled. And I can understand that because I'm troubled too. First and foremost is 3 more injuries. All right. Losing Dorsey is one thing, special teamer, and obviously a fill-in guy from the secondary. But Carlton Davis with a problem with the jaw, in all likelihood a broken jaw, right? And Aline McNeil with a knee. Those 2 are seriously troubling. And we should be worried about that because that's on top of all the other injuries. And it is just, you shake your head at it. You feel like, at least this is how I felt last night. This team can beat certain teams, right? When you're down a man, a 2, or 13, 17, 18, 19, close to 20.
You're running out of things to say about it.
You can be concerned about losing guys like that. And I would be too. I mean, I think you can beat teams like the Bears without them. Beating an elite team like Buffalo, beating a very good team in Philadelphia, and quite honestly, beating Minnesota is going to be challenging without guys like that. And look, I mean, Minnesota is still in that mix. And folks, the thing we have to remember is that these teams are balanced. And that's what's made Detroit so successful this year. We talk about their offensive weapons, but what has really allowed them to be so good for so long and so steady is their balance. And that was Buffalo yesterday. So we could talk about the 559 total yards that the Bills put up, which is astonishing. But the 197 yards on the ground, I think, is the most concerning. Buffalo won the battle of the trenches, both offensively and defensively. It also shows you just how valuable a guy like Josh Allen truly is. And I don't know if he wrapped up the MVP yesterday. I don't think he did, because I think Lamar Jackson is in the same conversation. He had 5 touchdowns yesterday. He's better in total yards. He's better in completion percentage. He's better in touchdowns, and he has fewer interceptions. But Josh Allen has done this on a pretty regular basis. He has been very, very steady. 16 touchdowns, accounted for 16 touchdowns over the last 5 games. And Lamar Jackson has had a dud here or there, but we won't get into that right now. Detroit being limited to a season low 49 rushing yards is concerning, on top of the 197 that they quote unquote allowed to Buffalo yesterday. And at 6:18, we'll get into the thing that everybody wants to talk about and everybody is second guessing and everybody will be talking about and should be talking about, quite honestly. We'll get into that here coming up. And it's a little bothersome for me too. And I know you've got some thoughts on it. So the Meyer hotline remains open for you. The text line remains open for you. But the bottom line is that Buffalo beat Detroit. Buffalo is probably the best team Detroit will play all season long. And I don't think the score indicates how big of a gap there is, at least on that Sunday, on yesterday. That's the biggest gap on a Sunday. It doesn't mean that every single time they play, this is what would happen. I think of all the different things that people were going through their mind, right? Like, what if this game were played in Buffalo and Buffalo had all that snow, and who is better built for such a game like this? And many people automatically feel like Buffalo would have the advantage in this situation because they're used to those elements and things of that nature. We've told you this, right? We said Detroit's only played a couple of games outdoors, okay? And San Francisco and Chicago coming up, all right? And it doesn't happen very often for them. So for Buffalo to go in and do what they did to Detroit makes you a little concerned about trying to measure yourself against the Bills. The other thing is, you look at it, and this is why in football and in sports in general, you can't play, well, he beat them, they beat him, that means he beats him. No, that's not the way it always works. The Rams took it to Buffalo last week in a 44-42 final. Buffalo couldn't stop them. So you expected Detroit to go out and throw the football. And earlier during the game, I was thinking to myself, I know what the callers are going to say. They're going to say, you didn't run the ball enough. Remember, Shep, we threw it too often against Tampa, and that's the reason we lost. When really we lost because of the red zone offense, 1 for 7 against Tampa. Detroit rushed the ball just 15 times yesterday. And perhaps there's a trend there. Perhaps there's some coincidence between Tampa and Detroit. They rushed it a lot more against Tampa than they did against Buffalo. But remember, Detroit was playing from behind a lot against Buffalo, couldn't stop them on offense. And you had to recognize David Montgomery got hurt and the fact that Detroit was not winning at the Battle of Impact. They were not winning at the line of scrimmage. It's as simple as that. You had to throw the ball to move the ball. Buffalo was more susceptible to the pass, just like when the Rams beat them, they threw the ball a lot. Didn't work out for the Lions. We'll get your thoughts on it. And, of course, the crucial play that many people feel was the difference in the game. We'll talk of that when we come back. Dan Campbell puts himself in a situation where members of the national media who have criticized him this week will be able to take dead aim at him yet again for a decision. We'll talk of that when we come back here on X's BrO's on a Monday morning with you across the great state of Michigan.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big. I'm Herman Moore, Lions all
I think it's an interesting poll question what we have out there for you right now. What the reason for the Lions losing to the Bills? Was it the fact that they just, their defense, they couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop Josh Allen. There's a lot of teams that couldn't stop Josh Allen. Look, folks, when Von Miller, who's a Hall of Fame player and has won a Super Bowl in Denver with Peyton Manning, has won a Super Bowl with the Rams and Matthew Stafford, and is now in Buffalo playing with a guy like Josh Allen, when he says he just goes out and has a special aura about him. I've played with some great ones, Stafford and, of course, Peyton, and he is one of those guys. I'm witnessing something different right now, and I can't put my finger on it. Let's just say it's a special moment in time. When a guy like that says something about a player, you know damn well, he would know before just about anybody, right? I would think so. You know damn well that there's something special about what's going on with Josh Allen, as if you and I didn't already see it, but he's living it on a pretty consistent basis. The defensive inability to stop the running game, Josh Allen, as I mentioned, and of course, the decision Dan Campbell made. The reason we put Dan Campbell in there is because of one decision that received an awful lot of blowback, and rightfully so. The Lions are down 10, and there's 12 minutes to go. Now, granted, they haven't really stopped Buffalo at all right? But they're down 10. There's 12 minutes left to go. Detroit had just scored, and they're going to onside kick it. And the problem with the NFL these days, and this is one rule. You and I could talk about, the ticky-tack pass interference a lot. We could talk about roughing the quarterback all the time. We could talk about holding and how you could call that on just about every single pass play. My biggest issue with the NFL is that onside kicks used to be used as a surprise, air quotes. Now, you literally have to tell the opponent that you're going to do it. It takes everything away. It's the most ridiculous rule you could possibly have. Like we touched on a couple of weeks ago that Rob Manfred thought he was the smartest guy in the room and actually talked about a golden bat rule where you could go to the bench and pick any player off the bench and possibly come up in a hitting situation as a way to spruce things up a little bit in baseball. Right? He came out and he said, that's not really a discussion. We just, that was kind of an open air conversation that we might have down the road, blah, 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 blah. It's a joke, right? This rule takes away the entire purpose of an onside kick. If you want to get injuries out of the game or the risk of injury out of the game, I get why you're doing what you're doing with the kickoffs, all right? But to sit there and tell somebody that we're going to onside kick takes away the entire definition of onside kicking. That said, Dan Campbell doing it when your team is down 10 with 12 minutes left, to me and to everybody, let's face it, you were saying the same damn thing. It doesn't mean that you think Dan Campbell's a bad coach. It doesn't mean you don't think he can get your team to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. It doesn't mean you want a new head coach. All it means is that you disagreed with, in time, that decision. And that's okay. Not every player on your favorite team is the best player in the league at his position, and not every coach on your favorite team is the best coach and makes every decision you agree with. It's all right to disagree. It was a wrong decision on most people's fronts, and including yours truly. I thought it was ridiculous. I didn't think there was a need for it. He obviously did. He knows more football than I do. He makes more money than I do doing it. He's got more at risk than you and I do. And he's got a better feel for the game. It doesn't mean we have to agree with him. I thought it was the wrong decision at the time, especially considering the circumstances. Down 10, 2 possessions, and with 12 minutes remaining. I get it if there's about 6 or 7 minutes remaining and you're down to 2 scores to one of the best teams in football. But to me, I thought it was unnecessary. Let's go to the phone lines. The Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Who's first up on a Monday morning?
We have Bill in Jenison, and he actually thinks there might have been a more impactful decision.
Hi, Bill. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Good, sir. Thank you. I'm doing great. Hey, thank you. I was obviously watching the game as well, and I don't disagree wholeheartedly with what you're saying about the 12-minute onside kick. At that time, I was thinking the same thing. What a horribly decision. But then after the game was over and I thought about it, I don't know if I'm all that upset about it because, like you said, we couldn't stop their offense.
Mm-hmm.
So who's to say, who's to say that we kick it deep? If Buffalo goes on a 6 to 7 minute drive, we're still in the same boat, but with less time. We may not get a chance to even get that touchdown to even get to the 42nd point.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of can see to where maybe they were thinking, you know what, if they recover it, maybe we get lucky and hold them, they kick a field goal, we're still down only 2 scores and we still got a bunch of time left on the clock. But as I was telling the screener there, I think my opinion is a play that was even more important than that was the turnover by St. Brown. I think that fumble obviously it wasn't his fault, but I think that turnover at that time really, really hurt us.
Yeah, I get it. Both can be the correct answer, by the way. You're right. I mean, Detroit had not shown a propensity to stop Buffalo. Buffalo had only punted once, right? Sam Martin had a 51-yard punt, and that was it. But let's face it, when you're giving a team that has that much firepower, especially on that day, and giving them a short field, for me, it's about risk reward, right? I said the same thing last week. Risk reward. You're at your own 31-yard line. You go for it on 4th down. What's the risk? The risk is you give the opposition, in that case, Green Bay, a short field. The reward is just a first down. It's a little different than when you're going for it in the red zone at the 21 with 40 seconds left. The risk is that you give the team the ball. They got to drive the length of the field to possibly try and tie it up. Or you go for it on 4th down and 1, and the game is over, right? In this case, for me, right, the risk is you're giving a potent offense that you have not been able to stop a very short field. At least it's somewhere in the neighborhood of half a field, right? That would be my risk.
Right.
What's the reward? You get the ball back. You're still down a score even if you do score. So I would have kicked the ball deep and tried my best, hoping that your defense would have some type of answer. I don't know if there's a right answer.
Right.
You're right. Turnovers are always a killer.
And I think that could go, both ways with that 12-minute onside kick. Either way, you're hoping for the best. We stop them, we hold them to a field goal, and we're still down 2 scores.
Yeah.
But do you have the same feeling about when they didn't onside kick it at 8 minutes?
Did I have the same feeling?
Are you upset or disappointed in Campbell that he didn't onside kick it at 8 minutes if he did it at 12 minutes after we scored that touchdown and we still had 8 minutes on the clock and he kicked it deep and he didn't do an onside kick there?
Yeah, no, I was not. 8 minutes left.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why, if he did it at 12 minutes, then why he wouldn't do it at 8 minutes.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I suppose, how many times can you go to that well? How many times are you really going to get, unless you're actually forced into it? I didn't think they were forced into it in either situation. So, no, I didn't have a problem with it. You bring up a really good point, and thanks for the phone call. I really appreciate it, Bill. We got to hit a break here in a minute. I think it's an excellent point regarding Amon-Ra St. Brown and the fumble. That took place when it was 28-14, and then, boom, Buffalo turns that into 7. Suddenly it's 35-14. It's a 21-point difference, and then you get to the sense where you're like, how are you going to stop this team? You never got the sense, correct me if I'm wrong here, I never got the sense this team was ever going to stop Buffalo. Buffalo did literally whatever it wanted to, offensively, through the air and on the ground, and it's almost a deflating feeling when you have a guy making as many plays as Josh Allen was making back there. And it really made me think of what other fan bases are thinking when they play the Lions, because you felt like every time the Lions had the football, there was going to be a problem for the opposition. Got to hit a timeout. The Meyer hotline's open for you, 866-838-4843. You can always text the program, Sports Radio, to 21,000 on a Monday morning throughout the great state of Michigan.
Hey, Michigan, let's go
thought we were going to get that ball. And one of Bates' best kicks that I've seen him have. That was a big kicker at the end. You know, I think took a good jump on us. And Hollis made a heck of a play on it. You know, obviously now sitting here in hindsight after been taking it down to the 3-yard line, yeah, I wish I would have done that. But it is what it is.
Those are the things. I mean, that phrase. That's why I can't stand that phrase. You know, it is what it is. We know what it is. You know, this is just absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. 38-28, the game. 12 minutes to go. Dan Campbell, his comments following the game on Jake Bates' onside kick that seemed to be a decent enough one. Unfortunately, I don't think the timing was right, and unfortunately, Hollins grabs it, takes it all the way down to the 5-yard line, and one play later, boom, there's a touchdown, and suddenly, instead of a 10-point game, it is now a 17-point game. 45-28. Welcome back, X's and Bros, Monday through Friday, 6 until 9. The Lions. It's amazing how one game can change your complete outlook or people's complete outlook on what's going on. Not that this matters first and foremost. The power rankings that'll take place in the NFL, the Lions will drop. Okay, so what? They haven't been first all year. They have been over the last few weeks, but it's not like in the beginning of the season. I mean, that they were ranked number 1. That shouldn't matter one damn bit. Odds. Suddenly it goes Buffalo with the Super Bowl odds, then the Lions, then the Eagles, then the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are the team that probably should be more offended by that than anybody else in football. They're the team with the best record at 13-1. They have the best player in Patrick Mahomes. Not that he's going to win MVP, but he has been the best player over the last 5-6 years in the NFL. They're the team that is the defending 2-time Super Bowl champions. They're the team that has the best coach in the NFL. So they should be more offended than anybody else, you would guess. And now you've got this. And I understand why Buffalo feels this way too. Buffalo people, the offensive line specifically, and Josh Allen has come out and said, look, we're not trying to start a beef here, but we're the best line in the country. And we show it every single week. That's the Buffalo Bills. After doing what they did against Detroit and what they have done all season long, being one of the best offenses in all of football, putting up 42 points against the Rams last week on the road, and then putting up 48 points this week against the Lions on the road, you could understand why they would make that statement, truly believe in that statement. I'm sure every offensive line feels like they're together and they can do as good a job as anybody else. We brag a lot about the Lions offensive line, and for good reason. They were the number 1 scoring team going into the game against Buffalo. They beat you up front. We've gone over the numerous fan favorite accolades that they've received with Pro Bowl nods and so on and so forth a couple of weeks ago. Overall, if you're asking Buffalo, they've got a pretty damn case for saying why they are the best offensive line in the league. Are they not? Everybody talked about Detroit and Philadelphia first and foremost. Those were the 2 teams that had the best offensive lines in football. They were duking it out on a regular basis. Who was better? Well, now Buffalo says, don't forget about us. And they've got a point there. You could make the argument that that is the most impressive win in the National Football League this year. Going into Ford Field, think about it for a second. Going into Ford Field and beating the Lions at their game. It was the Lions who had the best offensive line. It was the Lions who mauled you with running the football. It was the Lions that kept you off balance because of running and throwing. But yet it's Buffalo that does exactly that. This is a team that has gone into Seattle and won. It's a team that has beaten up San Francisco, and it's a team that has now gone to Detroit and won. And what could be arguably the best win of the season. Another example of why you can't play this team, that means equals this team's going to beat that team. earlier this year, Buffalo lost in Houston, 23-20. How Josh Allen didn't account for a touchdown in that one is beyond me, right? But 23-20, they lost. Detroit beat the Texans in Houston later in the season. So you can't play that game all the time. But this is something that Lions fans are going to have to get over. You're going to have to recognize that there are people outside of Detroit who feel like there are teams that are better than yours. And let's be honest with each other, okay? You can understand why. When you lose in that fashion, you can understand why. And as confident as we may be in this team, and for good reason, 12-2, that's a really impressive record, man. I mean, come on, 14 games, 11 straight wins, all the different things that we've talked about with this team. That's a really impressive record. But when you lose as many players as the Lions have lost, we're talking about 20 guys on the IR, right? We're talking about your best cover corner in Carlton Davis, the guy who barks out the signals defensively, and Alex Anzalone, your two best pass rushers, your best interior defensive linemen. On top of that, numerous special teamers that is oftentimes too much overlooked in Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Malcolm Rodriguez. Sure, they're linebackers. And yes, they come in certain situations. But special teams unit, as we always say, the cliche, a third of the game, right? Don't lose sight of how important those guys were in that portion of what it takes to be successful. All those things now have all those things added up. All those things, you have to recognize that other teams should be favored over your team. It's not an indictment on Jared Goff, an indictment on any of the running backs or the wide receivers or any of the coaches, quite honestly. There's only so much you can do when you're bringing guys in off the street. We praised them last week for being able to beat Green Bay with guys who didn't even know one another in the locker room. They deserved that type of accolades. But now, at some point, it's going to catch up with you. You need to recognize that. We all need to recognize that. It's tough to overcome that stuff. They've done a hell of a job until this point. But maybe it has caught up to them. We'll see. Maybe they're getting Chicago and San Francisco, two other teams that don't have the talent. Maybe they're getting them at the right time. If you're going to move forward and all you're going to have is DJ Reader, right? And Zadarius Smith and Jack Campbell and your safeties, it's still going to be really hard to beat good teams, really good teams. And obviously, the home field thing, as we've talked about numerous times, Detroit's got two losses, folks. Both of them have been at home against two really good offenses. Tampa's got a really good offense, and Buffalo's got a really good offense. Phone number on the Meyer hotline is there for you, 866-838-4843. The text line, Sports Radio 21,000. You can be listening on MichiganSportsNetwork.com as well. Minnesota tonight against Chicago. I don't know what Trent's daily wager is going to be, but I would guess it has something to do with the Minnesota Vikings tonight. Because if I am him, if I'm laying down any money, I'm taking the Vikings. I'm giving the points because Minnesota, first of all, is at home. Second of all, they've got all the incentive in the world. I think the line is 7. They've got all the incentive in the world to tie the Lions atop the division. And I think incentive can only last you so long, don't get me wrong. But considering they are that much better than Chicago, considering they're at home, and you add that to it, I think wrap that all up in one big Christmas bow. And I think Minnesota gets the job done tonight. We'll talk a little bit later on about that. We are also getting our hero and heels in. So make sure you've got your hero and your heel. We do that every Monday morning at 8:18. We give you the best performance of the weekend. It doesn't matter if it's a player. It can be a player. It can be a coach. It could be an organization. It can be a league if you want it to be. And then we give you the heel, the exact opposite of what we consider to be the best. We give you that at 8:18. Again, phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. I think there's a lot of things that people, when they look back at this game, and they'll point out, obviously, the onside kick. it was all over Twitter yesterday when that decision was made. This is not after the fact, all right? This was a constant attacking of Dan Campbell. A guy at ESPN, Dan Campbell has pushed all the right buttons in Detroit, but there's no defending that move. Another guy at ESPN. I love Dan Campbell, probably everybody's favorite coach, but I really, really question that decision. J.J. Watt, who was on site and had a lot of conies before the game, which was awesome. You know, I love that they served each of those CBS pregame members. I don't know which Coney Island they got him from, downtown Detroit, but they gave him conies. J.J. Watt was devouring his. He says it was a 10-point game, 12 minutes left. I don't understand. Others, Dan Campbell's the reason the Lions aren't 3-14, but also the reason they won't be Super Bowl champions. That to me is a ridiculous take. Lions onside kick down 10 with 12 minutes left. Dan Campbell just out Dan Campbelled himself. And one more, Campbell's onside kick call was idiotic. It made no sense, and it wasn't defensible. Just a few of the samplings that had taken place yesterday during the onside kick when Detroit was down 10 and had 12 minutes to go. The thing that I hope people don't do is walk away from that game only remembering that. All right? It's a good sit-down interview with Rex Ryan and Dan Campbell before the game on CBS. And he asked him about the fourth down plays. And Dan Campbell said, look, it's a feel thing for me. As we've defended him before, people think that they go for it more than anybody else, and they don't. But he said it's a feel thing for me. He says, there's been plenty of times where it's 4th and 1 and I've chosen to punt. But people don't remember that. I hope you go away from the game yesterday, not just focusing on the one onside kick or failed onside kick. We can disagree with it all we want. And I think you have every right to, and you should, okay? But as Bill and Jennison called earlier, the fumble by Amon-Ra St. Brown was difficult too. But beyond all that, the inability to stop Buffalo, specifically the run game, and the extension of the run game. You know, it's not always handing the ball off. Sometimes it's the swing passes. Sometimes it's the flares or the quick outs and things like that. That's an extension of your run game. The inability to stop all of that. And the tight ends. I mean, there's a play earlier in the game. Kincaid's matched up with Terrion Arnold. Like, that's a tight end matched up with a corner. I don't see that very often. You'll see a backer, you'll see a safety, but a corner, especially a starting corner, not a nickel, matched up with a tight end, and the tight end winning, shows you another reason why people who say tight end's really not that important, it's a luxury position, are out of their minds. It's a matchup made in heaven for an offense when you've got a really good tight end. And Buffalo with Kincaid and Knox actually have two of them. Let's get to the text line. Sports Radio 21,000. That's how you get involved. Love to get your feedback on it. Fire away, Trent.
Interesting text here. Someone says, I don't know why, but as soon as I saw Jared Goff drop back and try play action pass on the very first play of the game, I thought that we were going to play very uncharacteristic football. And even looking at Goff's numbers, I think he played as well as he could with some bad drops by receivers, but 40 yards rushing in the game is terrible.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good assessment of the offense yesterday.
Yeah, the first play action pass. I mean,
it was a passing play. I don't know if it was play action or not, but
it was play action.
Okay.
But the whole point is Detroit is known as a running team, right? I have good balance. I think it's a very good balance offense. I think most people feel like what they want to do is they want to come out and establish the run.
Leans run for sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure why a play action pass you would have that feeling. Look, I can't tell you how to feel. I can't say that you're wrong there because you're the one who felt that. I didn't think anything of it, quite honestly. Didn't matter to me one bit. I mean, I thought most people would say David Montgomery's in the game. You're going to want to establish the run. But running on first down or not running on first down doesn't mean you're establishing one thing or the other. You're trying to take advantage of what the defense is giving you, number one. But number two, you're also making sure you stay true to who you are. And Detroit is a very good running the football team. And if you're going to run play action off it, I think it makes a lot of sense. It didn't surprise me. It didn't necessarily create any concern for me either. But I can't tell you how to feel. And That's an interesting take on things. All right, let's get to another text. Go ahead.
I know what everyone feels like when they play the Lions and can't stop them. Like yesterday with Buffalo, the Lions need to copy Buffalo with the running back coming out of the backfield and catching it. They need to do that with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. Yeah, I that's why I said earlier, that's exactly what people feel. I know exactly how the opposing fan base feels about the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs had 5 catches.
83 yards too yesterday.
That's not a bad day at all. In fact, he had more catches than James Cook or Ray Davis combined. Ray Davis, the former Lion. So or Ty Johnson's the former Lion. I'm sorry. Ty Johnson had 5 catches. Jahmyr Gibbs had 5 catches. David Montgomery had a few catches too. Did he not? Yeah, he had 4. So 9 catches by Detroit's running backs. If you look at Buffalo's running backs, they had 5, 6, 7. So Detroit had a little bit more. Theirs were more successful than the Lions, and that's pretty obvious. Another text. Go ahead.
This one says, how about a great job of MSU hockey sweeping Minnesota at Minnesota?
Not easy.
Very impressive.
I don't care whether Minnesota, how high they're ranked or whether they are ranked or not. You go to Mariucci Arena and you sweep a series. That's an impressive run by Adam Nightingale and the Spartans. Good for them. All right, we got to hit a timeout. The Lions lose 48-42. Looking forward to your conversation with it all morning long. The Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. And don't forget the poll question. Biggest reason for the Lions' loss on Sunday. This is how you get involved by voting on X at XB Mornings or at Shep Matt. Biggest reason for the loss. Lions defense, poor Lions running game, season low, by the way, in running the football, just 49 yards. Dan Campbell or Josh Allen. I'm not going to lie. I hated putting Dan Campbell in there, but I know what the conversation is on a Monday morning after a loss like that. You can vote as often as you want at XB Mornings. We will have the results for you tomorrow in the 8 o'clock hour. A quick timeout and more of your conversation regarding the Lions from yesterday on X's and BrO's on the Michigan Sports Network.
The Freddie the Pizza Man Foundation is dedicated to providing support
Back with you on a Monday morning here on X's and Bros. Welcome. We're with you Monday through Friday, 6 until 9. Lions lose to the Bills 48-42. And it's oftentimes fans can have egos too. And that's okay. This is a little shot to the ego when everyone is talking about Buffalo as being the best team in the NFL right now. Everyone's talking about what they've been able to do and what you were not able to do. Detroit has allowed 79 points in the last 2 weeks. Buffalo in the last 2 weeks has scored 90 points, not turned it over at all, and allowed or been forced to punt just 3 times. That's it. In the last 2 weeks, Sam Martin has punted the ball just 3 times in a loss to LA and a win in Detroit combined. Buffalo has wins. This is why if people in Buffalo say we're the best team in the NFL, sometimes you just got to say, okay. I mean, especially if you're Detroit, they have beaten Kansas City. They've beaten Detroit. They've won in Seattle. They've beaten San Francisco, who people think is a talented team. They're not going to the playoffs in all likelihood. And here's who they have left. They have New England twice and the Jets once. That's what Buffalo has. So they're 11-3. They're going to finish, right? You would guess 14 wins.
I'll be shocked if they don't. If they don't win out.
Absolutely.
Unless maybe they're resting somebody.
Philadelphia is a team that is obviously 12-2. You know that after they have beaten Pittsburgh. They just beat them. They've won at Baltimore. They've beaten a good Washington team. They've won at Cincinnati. Those are impressive wins. Their last 3 are at Washington, home to Dallas, and home to the Giants. Maybe they lose to Washington, who almost lost to New Orleans yesterday. And I know you can't play the XYZ game, but still, I mean, there's a little bit of, you talk about certain teams that have maybe come down a little bit of a notch. The Chargers are one of them. Washington, too. It's a long season. It's a tough season. It's really hard. Remember a year ago, Philadelphia is a team that started 10-0 and then faded. This year, that same Eagles team with Saquon Barkley being obviously a much bigger upgrade at the running back position, that team starts 2-2. They've won 10 in a row. If people in Philadelphia were to battle you in some type of debate and say, my team's better than your team, my team's the best team in the NFC, could you understand why they would make that case? I'm not saying they're right. I'm just asking you, could you understand, considering their wins, why they would make that case? Because I can.
Yeah.
And
I think you're delusional if you deny that there's at least an argument there.
Absolutely. You're the ultimate homer if that's the case. And I don't think the Lions are what we saw yesterday. I think they're better than that. On the other hand, and these are the battles I have with myself. On the other hand, when you are without all the names that we've brought up, all right, now Aleem McNeil, who's a really important player, obviously Aiden Hutchinson and Marcus Davenport and Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone. I don't have to go through all the names, right? But the impactful names, it's one thing losing players. It's one thing losing a talented guy for depth. It's another thing losing impactful players. Carlton Davis is an impactful player. Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Alex Anzalone, those are impactful players. It's interesting that the Lions offense really hasn't lost anybody. They've lost a guy here or there. Dan Skipper's done a really nice job filling in for Taylor Decker. Can't say that I would want him every single week. I'd much prefer Decker, but he's done an admirable job. They've lost Kevin Zeitler for a game, and they've been able to overcome that. As a group, offensively, they've played pretty damn healthy. But defensively, I don't know if I've ever seen this type of defense get scorched from injury the way the Lions defense has this year. And it's not just numbers. I'm talking about impactful players. That in part is why many people, I would guess, in Philadelphia, maybe around the NFL, are looking at Detroit as what's going to happen. What happens now? How this team, this is what I've loved about this team all season long. This is why I've said this team is the best team in the NFL. What I've loved most is their ability to forget whether they've had success, and you win 11 games in a row, there's plenty of success, or whether you've lost. The bounce back from Tampa. How do they respond? How do they bounce back from this loss here to Buffalo when they go to Chicago, knowing that it's going to be a sheet pick for people to take the Bears? It's going to be a sheet pick because of weather and because of what Detroit is experiencing injury-wise, and because they have beaten Chicago earlier this year, and that was when Matt Eberflus made that ridiculous decision not to call a timeout late in the game on Thanksgiving Day,
Lost his job.
then was soon fired because of it. And in addition to that, let's face it, sometimes losses stick with you for a while, and it's hard for you to overcome those. Sometimes one loss can turn into two. It's what many managers and coaches will tell you. Don't let one loss turn into two losses. Turn the page as quickly as you can. It's what this team has done so very well, not just based off losses, because it was only one prior to this, but because of wins. Really important for them to be able to do that. And they've done it. They've done it really well. Let's go back to the text line. Sports Radio to 21,000 is how you get involved. Always look forward to your response. Go ahead.
Says a little confused by the Lions not calling a timeout late. Onside kick in today's NFL. They had a better chance kicking off, calling timeouts correctly, and winning. I think that's an interesting take. I don't disagree. I was also confused why they weren't calling timeouts late in that game with about a minute and change left. I mean, they didn't score that touchdown until there was 16 seconds left.
Yeah,
the JMO.
Yeah.
So it's at that point it is almost near impossible.
Yeah, I mean, even if you get the onside kick,
you then only have
you got 12 seconds left. You don't have any timeouts. So the thing is, everybody will tell you, you want to save your timeouts for defense, right? Offensively, what you can do is you can obviously clock it. You can throw to the sidelines and get out of bounds to stop the clock. Defensively, how do you stop the clock? You can't unless you call timeout.
Right.
Next text. Go ahead.
This one says David Montgomery is the key and glue to this team from the first snap. Also, to be totally honest, it was probably not a good idea to not pull receipts inside the Allen Park facility after winning in the playoffs, but blowing the NFC Championship game. They probably should have waited till they actually won it all once.
I'm confused at that last part.
I don't know what that one means either. I don't know what it means.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm just reading them.
Read that one slowly. Pull receipts
inside the Allen Park facility after winning in the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
From last season, I believe.
From last season. Yeah, I got it. People are
getting too big for their britches, maybe, is what he's saying.
People are going to celebrate. Look, that's a fine line, right? Live in the moment. It's just like on a play in the game. A cornerback makes a hell of a play, but there's a flag on it, and he got called for pass interference. Guy scores a touchdown, starts doing the dance. Oh, turns around, look out. What happened? Illegal block in the back or holding or whatever. You're living in the moment. Who are we to tell the Lions not to celebrate after doing what they did a year ago? How far you want to take that celebration might be up for debate because you'd like to act like you've been there before. But look, you work really hard all season long, and I don't mean just during the football season, to get that moment and enjoy it, embrace it. Go ahead. I'm fine with it, as long as you also eat a little humble pie if you come up short the next time around. The phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Quick timeout. This show is flying by, 10 after the hour on X's and BrO's.
Huge here for the Michigan High School Athletic Association. You
18 after the hour. Welcome back. X's and Bros, Monday through Friday, 6 until 9. You know when the bowl season starts? Any guesses?
Is it tonight?
Close. It's tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. What do we got tomorrow?
Memphis plays West Virginia tomorrow in the Frisco, Texas at the Toyota Stadium. Don't ask me what the bowl is. The Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl is what it is. You've got a bowl game tomorrow. You've got 2 bowl games Wednesday. You've got a bowl game Thursday. And then Friday, you've got 3 more, including the first game of the college football playoff with Indiana and Notre Dame. I ask you this, and that game's at 8 o'clock. So maybe it's just a full slate of football. You've got Ohio out of the MAC at Jacksonville State in the Camping World Stadium at Orlando in the whatever Cure Bowl that is. Tulane plays Florida at the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. That would be a great test one day. You know, give me the name of the bowl. Remember when it used to be the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl,
the Peach Bowl? What if I gave you like 4 options?
Bowl, the Rose Bowl. It was pretty simple, right? Now, because of everything being a corporate sponsorship, you have to know what the bowl game is, right? And this is not, I mean, this is, look, there are certain corporate sponsors you got to have because you can't just play it at a stadium and name it after the stadium, right? But now so many things are these long names of things. And you're like, I don't even know what the hell that is, right? But the bottom line is the college football playoffs has the first game on Friday at 8 o'clock, Indiana at Notre Dame. And then there are 3 games on Saturday. Those 3 games Saturday, SMU at Penn State, Clemson at Texas, Tennessee at Ohio State. The game that I'm really looking forward to is Tennessee at Ohio State. And the reason I say that is not just SEC against Big Ten, not just because it's 9 versus 8, but it's because I wanted to see a team in a warm weather climate come to the Midwest and play in December. And that's what I'm going to finally get. And I'm pretty excited about it. I don't know what the forecast is for Columbus, Ohio on Saturday. I hope it's snowy. I hope it's cold. Not because I'm rooting for Ohio State. I just want to see how the team performs. That's all. I want to see how Tennessee performs. We saw how the Lions performed yesterday. Yesterday's games, cumulatively, in the NFL, there were 51 turnovers. The most in any one day since 2016. It's a lot, obviously. Dan Orlovsky does as good a job, I think, as any analyst on television. I'm not saying during the game, but like pre-games and post-games and all those. He breaks down film as well as anybody. I love watching him break down the film. And he breaks down film on social media too. And he's doing it on X, if you follow him. And he broke down a couple of plays from yesterday's Lions-Bills game that I think really highlight how Buffalo is so similar to Detroit. We rave about what Brad Holmes has done in the draft and signing players, and rightfully so, because it's what has made this team successful, drafting and developing. We hear that phrase a lot. How many teams go out and do it? The teams that need to do it in other sports, like, for example, the Tigers, they have to draft and develop because they're not going out and signing guys like the Yankees and the Mets and the Red Sox and the Blue Jays and the Dodgers and the Giants and the Padres and Phillies. They're not doing that. All right. So drafting and developing is really important. Football, I don't think you can win unless you do draft and develop. You can sprinkle in the free agents where you may need it, but you have to draft and develop. So we give the Lions a lot of credit for doing that because they've been successful at it with Brad Holmes in charge. Well, Buffalo's done the same thing. Dan Orlovsky last night broke down 2 plays that were really important. And I know when people look at the final score, 48-42, they think, oh, that Buffalo defense gave up a ton too. They gave up a ton through the air because they made Detroit one-sided team, right? One-dimensional. But he brings up two players. He brought up Christian Benford and Taron Johnson. Both guys out there contributing a lot on defense, breaking down how they are able to hem in David Montgomery and tackle him. They were responsible for the fumble caused by Amon-Ra St. Brown because of how they're form tackling. And both of them are mid to late round draft picks. Johnson was a 4th rounder. Benford was a 6th rounder. Out there contributing to a team that has already won its division, that is going to be one of the favorites right now listed. If you look at the various sport books, including Soaring Eagle Casino, you'll see that it's Buffalo having the edge now for Super Bowl favorites to get there. And you can understand why, even though they've lost 3 games. I find it fascinating, the mindset of all of us. You get a team like Buffalo who's lost 3 games, and they feel great about where they're at. They might have spent all week in Buffalo complaining about their defense. And perhaps there's a part of them that goes, we gave up 44 last week. We gave up 42 this week. Folks, we gave up 86 points in the last 2 weeks. Do we really feel like we're Super Bowl contenders? But because of who they played, where they played them, and in this case, who they beat, they feel really good about themselves. In Philadelphia, they feel really good about themselves, even though they may not be the best at one particular thing. The Lions, we felt great about because they were the number 1 scoring offense, the number 2 scoring defense. They have dropped from number 2 defensively all the way down to number 7 after what happened yesterday against Buffalo. But Buffalo, 3 losses, right? Philly, 2 losses, same as Detroit. Hell, even Kansas City with 1. They may not feel great about themselves because, Patrick Mahomes just suffered a high ankle sprain. Maybe there's a part of them that says these tight games have got me a little concerned. We're not blowing teams out. I don't know why that should matter. Wins should matter more than anything else. But maybe there's a part. In Buffalo, despite the amount of points scored against their defense the last 2 weeks, guaranteed that they feel great today because of what they were able to do against one of the best teams considered in the NFC and doing it at Ford Field. Back to the text line. Sports Radio 21,000. Fire away.
To that point, or along those lines, this texter brings up the 2011 Giants had the 25th ranked defense and still won the Super Bowl. The Bills could follow that model.
Good. I would need a little clarification. 25th in what? Scoring? Do they indicate that?
They just say 25th ranked defense. It's probably either scoring or yards per game. But the point is just they didn't have a very strong defense, and yet they somehow found a way to win the Super Bowl. And I think everyone would take Josh Allen over Eli Manning. So they also have that going for them.
Yeah. I think Buffalo's not quite that bad, at least in scoring defense. They're like 11. Buffalo is, and that's even after giving up the amount of
that's actually
giving up the last.
That's good.
That probably surprises people a little bit. If you're looking at yards per game, then it's a little different. Does that really matter to you? Does it matter how much you give up in yards per game? It doesn't to me. I don't know. Who cares if a team's scoring between the 20s? I don't give a crap. I care about how often are you letting them into the end zone.
Well, because it's also like you could get a big stop on a 4th and 1 or something like that, and that's a big play.
Job of that, right? I mean, Buffalo's. I mean, you're giving up. You're 11th in the league in that type of category. I think you're okay, but that's an interesting statistic. I'm sure there are others. The Indianapolis Colts, regular season wise, when Peyton Manning and company won it, they weren't great defensively. I'll have to look that up. We'll do that during the break and continue with the conversation on the other side here on X's and Bros. Stay with us.
Shop Meyer for thousands of
are times where we all happen to give a little bit of attention to something that we don't originally agree with. That is the case here coming up in this segment. Don't forget 8:18. We've got Hero and Heels, so make sure you get yours ready. Submit those to us. You can text them to us if you'd like at Sports Radio to 21,000, or send them to us via Twitter at XB Mornings, and we'll give you the results and feed those off to you. What our Hero and Heel for the weekend was at 8:18. But the Free Press has the guy's a friend of mine. I like him. We play golf together. We have very honest and frank conversations with one another. But oftentimes I feel like he writes to shock you, to try and get clicks. That's what newspaper writing has become. It just is. I mean, even the writers themselves will tell you. I mean, a lot depends on how many clicks they're getting on their website. But the headline in the Free Press this morning is, we all knew this debacle against the Bills was coming from the Detroit Lions' depleted defense. So I ask yourself, or I ask you to ask yourself, please, did you know this was coming? And if so, what was the indication? Because the article in so many words says, look, when they lose Aiden Hutchinson against Dallas, you know you've got problems and you should have foreseen this coming. We just didn't want to admit it. Now, against Dallas, which turns out to be a not so talented team, but Detroit was pretty damn good. They held the opposition to a season low 9 points. Prior to that, the Rams had scored 20, the Buccaneers had scored 20, the Cardinals 13, the Seahawks 29. All right. After that, Detroit did a lot of really good things. For example, they held the Titans to 14. They held the Packers to 14. They held the Texans to 23. They held the Jaguars and Colts each to 6 points, which is now the low bar. They held the Bears to 20. And it's really been the last 2 weeks that perhaps has given you great concern defensively. And I get it. Would I use the word debacle? Hell no.
I also don't necessarily know if we saw this coming, but I think you knew they were susceptible to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And let me ask you this. I just gave you the numbers in which Buffalo and what they've done. They've scored 90 points over the last 2 weeks, but they have allowed 46 or 86 rather. So I ask you, should Buffalo have seen it coming? I don't know.
That's a good question. I just mean with all the injuries, I don't know if it's fair to say, well, we knew this was going to happen, but you knew it was on the board with how depleted the defense is.
I hate to tell this to people, but this could happen at any point, whether you're healthy or not. This could happen to a lot of different teams. I mean, I think there are certain teams, for me anyway, that are really good, right? I think the Eagles are really good. I've said this for a long time. I think the Eagles are really good. They've given up some points this year. Not as many as Detroit, but they've given up. And the Packers scored 29 against them earlier this season. Should we have seen it coming? They've been trending better. If you want to say the trend has been this way over the last 2 weeks, I'll buy that. But to say we should have seen this coming since Aiden Hutchinson was injured against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, that's a bridge too far.
Really going a little bit too far and suggesting you had this crystal ball that you really didn't. I understand the level of concern right now because I'm concerned. Okay. And I said at the very beginning of the show at 6 o'clock, I said, take it easy. Everything's going to be all right. I think Detroit's going to be fine. I still think they're going to win the number 1 seed in the NFC. I value this coaching staff. I think they're going to be ready and win in Chicago. I think they're going to be ready and win in San Francisco. And I do think they'll finish things up against Minnesota. And I think they're going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC, which automatically does not mean that they will win every playoff game played at Ford Field and they'll go to the Super Bowl. All right. As much as I respect you folks as fans and the fanometer and how loud it gets and all that other stuff doesn't mean much. It doesn't. Sometimes it does. I get it. But really good teams can play through that. Green Bay said it yesterday. Matt LaFleur said the Green Bay fandom in Seattle made a difference. Well, Seattle gets really loud, whether it be a home team or a little bit of a road team. flavor for it. You can win on the road. It happens. It happens quite a bit, quite honestly. Just look around the league and what took place even yesterday.
Lions haven't lost on the road, to your point.
Right. The Lions haven't lost on the road. There are 2 losses to Tampa and to Buffalo, both at Ford Field. But I firmly believe that this team is going to be okay in that sense. Now, granted, they're playing 2 teams, 2 of the next 3, where their offense is not quite as gifted as some of the offenses they've played as of late. But there is a reason to be concerned when you're playing really talented teams. And let's face it, when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you may not want to hear it, when you have a quarterback like that who you really have to contain in the pocket, and this is where the defensive ends, Aiden Hutchinson specifically, really not having a guy like that really hurts you, all right? Because Allen's ability to get outside, he is more dangerous rolling to his right, looks to throw more going to his right, looks to run more going to his left. He can throw going left, which makes him really special. But that's the hard part about it. And if all goes well and you're able to get to the NFC Championship game and you play a team like Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts is a very mobile quarterback. You get to the Super Bowl, you're going to play either a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, or a Lamar Jackson. Okay, so those are games yesterday that maybe concern you. Would you rather see Sam Darnold? Yes. Would you rather see Jordan Love? Yes. For what reason? That. Think about it. 2 of the guys who gave them the biggest problems this year, Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. 2 really good mobile quarterbacks. Let's go to the text line, sports radio to 21,000. Fire away. Who's up next?
I think you'll like this one, Shep, because I think this is a pretty measured take here. It says the belief the Lions would lose just 1 game this season was unrealistic. This is the NFL. Hats off to the Buffalo Bills for attacking early and often the weakest part of this defense, the linebackers. Lions without Anzalone, Barnes, and Rodrigo. Great game plan.
Yeah, 100%. That's really well said.
Because you look at the injuries on defense, but specifically, I do think that linebacking core specifically is what is suffering the most right now. Because going into yesterday, at least.
Line, and the reason I say the defensive line is because the amount of time that Josh Allen had is just you can't win moving forward. I don't care who the quarterback is. All right, you give any NFL quarterback time, you're going to get picked apart. And I don't think they pressured him nearly enough. And look, I've got to realize some things too. They did have some guys back, right? They had a couple of guys back, which was great. But you cannot give quarterbacks that much time to throw the football. You need more pressure. I would like to know how many times they blitzed, because they weren't getting pressure with 4. Why were they not bringing more pressure? Maybe that's because they didn't want to be susceptible to Josh Allen and his ability to run the football, and because Buffalo was able to keep Detroit off balance. When you rush for 197 yards and then you throw for well over 350, I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? But I think
it felt like they blitzed Jordan Love a lot more. It felt like they blitzed Jordan Love a ton.
Yeah, or maybe they just got home more, and that's what you and I are looking at, right? Maybe they blitzed more yesterday. Maybe we can find that information out. Maybe they blitzed more yesterday. They just didn't get home, and Buffalo picked it up. And credit to Buffalo for doing that. But it seemed like they blitzed Jordan Love a little bit more. Detroit has got to be able to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, it was bad yesterday.
Yeah, he had all day to throw, didn't he?
Yep.
I thought so. Back to the text line. Go ahead.
I hope Brad Holmes stops drafting and trading for often injured players. Marcus Davenport, Carlton Davis, Levi Onwuzurike, J-Mo, Pascal, etc. And how much money has Emmanuel Mosley made in 3 years for never playing and healthy scratches?
So the very beginning, I get the Davenport part of it. I do. Carlton Davis, he gets hurt late in the season, and it's a jaw.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a fake
I wouldn't
thing.
consider that. Yeah, I wouldn't. All right, and then we're talking about some of the other guys. What are some of the other names?
J-Mo, Onwuzurike, Pascal.
J-Mo missed it his rookie year, right? Pascal, was he an injury-prone player?
Oh, yeah.
In college?
I don't know about in college, but I know in the pros he has
that's what
been.
he's referring to. He's referring drafting injury-prone players. I'll have to look that up regarding Josh Paschal. All right, because I didn't know about that. That to me is that's newsworthy to me if he's drafting guys like that. I'm not criticizing Brad Holmes' draft picks. I'm not going to do that because I think they've been really good. Josh Paschal, keep in mind, was a second-round pick. He's
Kentucky, right?
He came out of Kentucky, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not I want to find this to see if he's a guy who.
How many games he played in college? How many games he missed, I should say.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. This is like a Seinfeld episode where you're finishing my sentence. I don't know if you saw that Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I'm trying to look for that, try to find him in college. I'll try to do that and get back to you on that. I don't recall him missing a lot of time in college, and I don't remember Jamison Williams being injured a lot at Alabama. Was he? I know he was injured coming out.
Injured when they drafted him, yeah.
But overall, I mean, what exactly are we going to look at when it comes to quote unquote injury prone players? Are we looking strictly for what they did when they first got to the NFL, or are you looking at their collegiate careers? And for Jamison Williams, I think it was the very last year he played at Alabama where he was injured, right? Would you say this? Jamison Williams he's had a pretty good year, right? I don't think he's had a great year, but he's had a pretty good year. He's been a big-time contributor, I think, to the success of this Lions offense. He's been
a very solid number 2 wide receiver.
I'm
Yeah.
just asking you, has that been fair? Okay.
Yeah.
So would you second guess the pick now?
No.
Okay.
Personally, I wouldn't. No.
Maybe some of the decisions, some of his personal decisions, I'd like him to grow up a little bit more.
A judgment.
Somebody brought this up to me the other day. They said, people are ripping on Dan Campbell for going for it on fourth down, and we didn't like the onside kick yesterday. How about some of the other things like taking a guy like Jamison Williams? I don't want to call him a prima donna, but when you're coming out of college and you're highly drafted like that and you come out of that program and you're putting up the numbers that he put up at Alabama, many of them believe like they're going to be the next superstar. They want to be the next CeeDee Lamb. Are they going to be engaged in blocking downfield? Are they going to buy into your scheme, buy into what you think they have to do in order for this team to be successful? He blocks downfield. I know it's a small thing, but it's an important thing. He's a really good blocking wide receiver downfield. Dan Campbell and his coaching staff got him to buy into that. Let's not just look at some of those on the surface type things that are always jumping out to us on the sheet of paper in numbers. Look at some of the other things that some of these guys are doing. Let's go to the phone lines. The Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've got Brett, and he's got some thoughts on what he calls smoke and mirrors on this Lions defense.
Okay.
Hey, Shep.
Hey.
Hey, man, I've been talking to you for a couple, 2-3 weeks. I've just been, what Aaron Glenn's done is phenomenal, all right? But I knew it was going to catch up to it eventually. I mean, the big, strong, mobile quarterbacks in our defense has never been really good, but what we've done for 11 games in a row with what we had on defense, nobody should be complaining about Brad Holmes at all. I mean, it's a miracle that we made 11 games in a row before this reared its ugly head.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
And this crap about blaming people for being injury prone, I do agree with that sometimes, but you also got to understand it's the most violent sport in the world. Even with all the pansy-fighting of the defensive hits and everything, it's still a violent game. And I think I haven't heard, maybe you guys have, because what is McNeil done for the year? Because these players know when they tear their knee up and they're done. And he sure looked like he knew something was bad.
Yeah, they didn't say it was done for the year, but
we'll find out today, Dan.
Every indication is that he is. But I'm not going to speculate on something like that when it hasn't been announced. You know?
Okay, now when they say jaw injury, you can only have two things that I know of. TMJ, which is very painful and has caused Lee McNeil to miss a few games, or he broke it.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, that's the assumption.
If you're going to blame a player's injury history on a broken jaw, you guys got, and not you guys, but whoever's saying this stuff, they need to realize that, we just got bad luck this year. We went into the year being the prohibitive favorites in the NFC to win the NFC. And we got decimated on one side of the ball.
Yeah.
But other teams have been decimated just as bad, but they spread it out over both sides of the ball. And it's easier to hide deficiencies when it's spread out over three phases of the game compared to just one.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's a good take. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for the phone call. Dead on there. I can't say that we necessarily saw it coming. Okay. There's something to be said for how talented Buffalo's offense is. Remember this. Buffalo was the second best offense in the league and still is the second best offense in the league to the Lions because they won. And because they put up those numbers, that has forced many people to push the proverbial panic button. Detroit's still number one in points per game. They were moving the ball after the first couple of drives, they're moving the ball pretty well. I thought overall, you put up as many points as Detroit put up, 42, you should feel pretty good. I guess this is all in the eyes of the beholder. But you look at Buffalo, should they be concerned with the amount of points that they've allowed the last couple of weeks? Do you think they see this coming? That the trend, look at the trends. If you want to look at the trends over the last couple of weeks for Detroit's defense, look at the trends for Buffalo's defense. And my guess is, and both teams are 1-1 during those 2 weeks, my guess is more people feel pretty damn good about what Buffalo has done because they won at Detroit, considered the best team in the NFC, than the other way around. Phone number, 866-838-4843. You can always text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. This is X's and BrO's on the Michigan Sports Network.
Hey, Michigan, let's go.
some facts and come back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me. You can't handle the truth.
I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We weren't good. There's no sense asking me things about the game. I'm telling you, we laid an egg, so I'm not going to break it down for you. He sucked. He sucked. But he laid an egg. That's all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break it down for you. Nothing went well for us. It's on us. We have to figure it out, and we will.
It's showtime. Final hour of the program. Glad you're with us on this Monday morning following a Lions loss to the Bills. Detroit now 12-2. Field Yates tweeted this out last night. The Chiefs and the Lions combined against teams other than Buffalo, 25-1. Buffalo's 2-0 against those two teams. Somebody had texted us and said, I wish Brad Holmes had stopped drafting players who were injured. Jamison Williams played all 15 of Alabama's games his last year at Alabama. Josh Paschal had a malignant melanoma and missed his sophomore season, but he wasn't injured shortly thereafter. He was all SEC, played in every game. Levi Onwuzurike played every game. I mean, he redshirted as a freshman, but I don't, sure, he gets to the NFL, he had a back issue. Paschal gets to the NFL, he has missed time in each of his 3 years with injuries. Jamison Williams, yes, had an injury his freshman year. Does that mean that they were drafted as injured players? I don't recall that line of thinking at all. I don't recall that theme in any of the articles that were written about these guys. So I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'd forgotten it. But I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think Brad Holmes is drafting injured players on a regular basis. Do you think so? Was Penei Sewell injured?
No.
Was Jack Campbell injured? How about Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round? Was he injured? Was Sam Laporta injured? What do you mean he's drafting all these injured players? He's drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. People didn't like it. He wasn't injured, right? Brian Branch wasn't injured. You're picking out 3 guys, conveniently, who have been injured as NFL players, but they didn't have a history of injuries that would cause other teams to pass on them. We have any more texts? Just want to make sure we cleared that up.
We are caught up right now.
We're caught up on texts. Okay, we always welcome the texts, and we always welcome your phone calls on the Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. At 818, we've got Hero and Heels. Welcome any player, coach, organization, league, whatever it may be, as a hero or a heel for you from over the weekend. That's where we give you the best we think of the weekend and arguably the worst. Okay. Real quick with the headlines before we get to the poll question results from Friday and our daily wager. And the daily wager is brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort, as is this hour of our program. Lions fall to the Bills 48-42, as you know. Jared Goff, the first quarterback to throw for over 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions in a loss. Usually those numbers mean wins. In this case, it meant a loss. Detroit now 12-2. They're tied with Philadelphia. However, Detroit does have the tiebreaker because of best conference record right now. Each team has 3 conference games left. And for the Lions, 2 on the road, 1 at home. At Chicago, at Frisco, home to Minnesota. For Philadelphia, 3 against the NFC, 2 at home, 1 on the road. The 1 on the road next against Washington. Then it's Dallas and the Giants at home. All right? Bears take on the Vikings tonight. They will close out week 15. So the Lions will get them on a short work week. That's a positive, right? Chiefs now on the league's best record, 13-1, thanks to a road win in Cleveland. Pistons are going to host Miami tonight. Detroit, 6 games under the break even. They have dropped 7 of their last 10. They take on a Miami team that seems to have a little turmoil because there's open discussion about trading Jimmy Butler, who has said that can be a good thing. You know, people are talking about me, so that's a good thing. It hasn't affected them necessarily. They're 5th in the Eastern Conference right now, and they've won 4 in a row. Here's our poll question for today. What is the biggest reason for the Lions losing to the Bills on Sunday? Is it because of their defense, Lions defense? Is it because of the poor Lions running game, a season low 49 yards? Was it because of Dan Campbell? Maybe we should have put decisions by Dan Campbell, specifically down 10, 12 minutes to go, onside kick. Or was it because of Josh Allen, who again was spectacular, threw for 2 touchdowns, rushed for 2 more. Buffalo has scored 90 points over the last 2 weeks, punted only 3 times over that 2-week span, and no turnovers. That might be the biggest change in Josh Allen, is his decision-making. Anyway, that's our poll question. You can vote as often as you want at XB Mornings. On Friday, here's what we asked you. Who would you rather have as your quarterback? And Trent, when does the cutoff? The cutoff's on Saturday, right?
Yeah, there's only 24 hours to vote.
24 hours. So there's no chance for you to have been voting once the Bills beat the Lions and you saw what Josh Allen could do. We asked you, who would you rather have as your quarterback? Jared Goff or Josh Allen? What was the result?
Really no surprise. 66% say Josh Allen, 34% say Jared Goff.
That is a little surprising for me.
You thought it would have been higher for Josh Allen?
No, I thought it would have been lower.
I thought Josh Allen would run away with this.
Of Jared Goff, I thought people really believe in him and love him, and I thought maybe that would overtake them. Now they voted with their head, not their heart, so I give them credit. All right, let's get to the Daily Wager. We do this every day. It's where Trent gives you his best bet of the weekend. It's brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Check out their sportsbook at Ascend. It is phenomenal there, no doubt. It's really good food. It's good cold drinks mixed well, a little bit more than you usually get, so a little potency, so that's good. And you're watching with some really cool people, and you get a chance to watch a lot of different things. So yesterday, I said this while we were watching the Lions and Bills. I said to some people we were watching the game with, I said, I wonder if you're an unbiased fan, so you're not a Eagles or Steelers fan, a Lions or a Bills fan, which game do you think people would be watching?
Lions, Bills.
Because of the offense.
Yeah. You got Josh Allen, who's probably going to win the MVP, and then you got the Lions, who are the Lions. Everyone loves watching the Lions offense. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no bigger fan base in the NFL than Pittsburgh. And I think, Philly and Pittsburgh, that's an enticing matchup.
That's a blue-collar game right there.
You're talking about 2 division leaders, just like you were with the Lions and Bills. You're talking about the Eagles, who are on a major roll. Now that they've won 10 in a row. And Pittsburgh, who just seems to find a way to get it done every single week. Anyway, that's something that we were discussing yesterday. We asked you the question, who would you rather have as your quarterback? You've answered that. Now we look at the Daily Wager, brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. What did you have on Friday, and what do you have for us today?
We closed the week with a bang because we took Lions Bills over 54, and that easily hit. There was nothing but points in that game. The Bills almost hit the over by themselves. But tonight, I'll stay in that arena. I'll go over 43.5 for Bears at Vikings. I just think we'll see more than 43.5 points. I like the Vikings -7, but I could also see the Bears losing by 6 or something like that. I don't want to touch that line. Just give me the over.
Okay. Let's do a little thing here. I would take Minnesota. I think you're probably right about that, but I take Minnesota giving the 7. I think Minnesota is going to beat them and beat them rather handily. But the beauty of what you always say, you can always go against us.
You can. And sometimes that's the play.
That's the Daily Wager, brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. When we come back, who's your hero from the weekend? Who's your heel? Maybe some unique choices here, not the most obvious. We'll get to that when we come back on X's and Bros after this.
Shop Meijer for thousands of last-minute gifts without any shipping. All ready for pickup in-store today. Choose from select board and card games like Jenga and Guess Who, now just $10 or less. Save on select Lego playsets, now 30% off. And Melissa and Doug toys are 25% off. Get everything you need for the holidays in one stop and Meyer and make your festive season a good deal better. Exclusions apply. See all deals in the Meyer app.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big. I'm Herman Moore, Lions All-Pro wide receiver, and I'm talking real big-time winning on the hottest slots and table games on one incredible app, Eagle Casino and Sports.
Sign up now and get up to $1,500. That's right. We'll match your deposit for up to $1,500, and you'll get 100 free spins.
Eagle Casino and Sports. Made in Michigan, made for Michigan.
Must be 21 or older in Michigan to play.
15 after the hour. Welcome back, X's and Bros. Every Monday we do a thing called Hero and Heels. Who was the best over the weekend? Who was the worst? And we welcome anything you might have to say. You can call us on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843, or you can text your hero and or heel to Sports Radio 21,000. The easy thing to talk about in this would be a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. These two guys have separated themselves in the MVP race. Allen throws for 362 and 2 scores, rushes for 68 yards and 2 scores in the win in Detroit. Jackson, 290 yards and 5 touchdowns over the Giants. He's now thrown 29 touchdowns, by the way, and thrown for almost 3,300 yards, completed 67% of his passes. What we've asked you to do is try to be a little bit bigger than that. Don't think of the obvious. Don't do what's obvious. So I was struggling. Okay, I don't want to take yours because I don't know what yours is. I thought of Blake Horvath, the Navy quarterback.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
He had a great game.
Oh my God, he was unbelievable, right? I mean, he was over 300 total yards, over 200 yards rushing, over 300 total yards in the upset win over Army to snap a 2-game slap. But I'm going to go with Rod Brindamore. And people might go, wow, Rod Brindamore. He's the head coach. The former Spartan is the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, or Carolina Hurricanes, rather. And over the weekend, Roy Cooper, the governor of Carolina, awarded him the Order of the Long Leaf Pine medallion for service, significant contributions, and service in the community. His team had beaten the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-1. The governor goes in. He says he probably wouldn't want to do this. But what Rod Brindamore and Carolina has meant to the community is worthy of such an award. And Brindamore, as you know, 10 years as a player there, was a captain, won a Stanley Cup as a captain, has been a coach there for 7 years. His team with 39 points, third in the Metro right now. But credit where credit is due, and what a great honor it is for the former Spartan, Rod Brindamore. He's my hero from the weekend. I think it's a little bit off the beaten path, not so obvious. I wanted to make people aware of it, so I've got Rod Brindamore as my hero.
That's a good one, Shep. Honorable mention for me, just quickly, Ferris State Bulldogs. I don't know if you saw any of that game or what went down. They were down big at halftime, and they came back and rallied in the fourth quarter, rallied late. I think they pitched a shutout in the second half of that game, and they're moving on to the D2 state championship. But I'm going Michigan State hockey.
National championship game, right?
D2 national championship. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's right.
Michigan State hockey, number 3 in the nation. They hit the road to take on number 1 Minnesota in a 2-game set. They tie the first game on Friday, 3-3, and then they're down 3-1 midway through the third period in game 2 on Saturday. They score 3 unanswered goals in a quick 2 minutes and change, and they end up winning the game and essentially winning 5 out of 6 potential points from that series. And they hadn't won. They hadn't beat Minnesota at Minnesota since February of 2020, and they just picked up a really big one. So shout out to Adam Nightingale and the Spartans.
Good for them, man. Happy for them. They've been good all year. They were really good last year. They're good again this year. He's done an unbelievable job there. So kudos to Adam Nightingale and the Spartans. We both picked hockey people, and we both had them associated with the Michigan State program for our heroes. Here's our heel, all right? For me, it's Washington Mystics WNBA owner Sheila Johnson. She says this. Now, remember, Caitlin Clark, most exciting player in the league, named the Athlete of the Year. And Johnson says this. It's taken the WNBA almost 28 years and something for this year to click. Not just Caitlin Clark, it's Reese, and we have so much other talent that has been recognized or that has not been recognized. And we can't just pin it on one player. She says, I'm going to be very honest because I feel really bad because there has been so many players of color who are equally as talented and never get the recognition they deserve. Now, remember this. 31% of her team's attendance this year were in 2 games against Indiana and Caitlin Clark. Remember this. Clark set the rookie record for most assists in a season. She proved spiteful veterans like Diana Taurasi wrong by averaging 19 points, 5.7 boards, 8.5 assists. She earned over 700,000 All-Star votes, which total would mean more than the top 5 vote getters from last year combined. On top of that, attendance numbers were up 105% higher than the year before. The TV ratings averaged almost 1.2 million, or triple the audience for other WNBA games. And you've got an owner, along with players, who have come out and said how spiteful they are of her. Why? Ask yourself, why is she getting the attention? By the way, this is a league that also loses $40 million. They don't make money. Find me a business where you're opening up more and more throughout a country and you're not making money. They're expanding. They want to expand, but they're not making money. You tell me how that makes sense. I'd love to listen. Why is it so bad to acknowledge the impact of a great young player, and I'll say it, a white player in a black-dominated sport? We've acknowledged Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Doug Williams and Michael Vick before that, and Randall Cunningham before that, in what was considered a white-dominated position. Why is it so bad that Caitlin Clark, who's exciting, brought more attention to women's basketball, should mean more money to women in the WNBA? Why is it so bad to acknowledge this? What the hell is going on here? I can't even imagine what it would be like if it were the other way around. Oh, yeah, I can imagine. It has happened to guys like Donald Sterling, and they've been run out of the league. Let's see what kind of pushback Sheila Johnson has with the Washington Wizards. She's my hero.
I'm going to give mine to Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins because, Shep, they were my pick to win that division. And then they kind of fell into a bit of a hole, and then Tua came back, and they started looking like they might have found something. They lose at Lambeau on Thanksgiving. I don't think anyone's really going to hold that against them. It's not a bad loss. Then they come back. They beat the Jets. All right, good win. And then they put up 12 against Houston the other day. Tua throws 3 picks. They look terrible. I thought they'd be a much better team than what they've shown thus far. That's all, in a vacuum. And they still got not the whole season, but they still got 4 games ahead of them. I'm not gonna take them out of it here, but at 6-8. Excuse me. Right. I mean, they got to run the table here to even have a shot at the playoffs. So, Miami Dolphins.
Should that be on them or on you for picking them in the first?
It's on both. But by picking them, I am acknowledging how wrong my pick was by giving them my heel for the week.
Yeah, they have the Niners, the Browns, and the Jets left. They have 3 games left. San Francisco, at Cleveland, at the Jets. Could they? I don't think so.
I think they're going 2-1 in that stretch, and they're going to finish the season 8-9.
And yeah, that's not.
I won't get you in.
You know, Denver's a team. I mean, you look at Denver; they're 9-5. They've won 4 in a row. They're not catching Kansas City, but they're your final playoff team. Now they still have to go to LA against the Chargers. I would guess that would be a loss. They still have to go to Cincinnati, and then they've got home against Kansas City. But as of right now, you feel pretty good if you're a Denver Broncos fan, thinking that
that is a brutal final 3-game stretch right there.
Really is. It really is, because
I doubt there's another team with the harder schedule.
Outscore Cincinnati. Cincinnati's offense. I mean, look what Jamar Chase did over the weekend. He became the 5th wide receiver to ever put up the numbers that he's put up in terms of catches and yards and touchdowns in the same season. When we come back, we'll dive into a little baseball for you, unless you have more texts and more phone calls to come our way via the Meyer hotline and on the text line on X's and Bros. Stay with.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey. Now, Josh joins me in
4843. The text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Some interesting news over the weekend where Houston trades Kyle Tucker. He's a phenomenal player. He's only 27. Hits for power, hits for average. Really good defensive player in right field as well. Trades him to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for former Tiger Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wisniewski, a first-round pick as in Cam Smith. And the big reason for this, not that he's going to get the same type of contract as Juan Soto, 15 years, $765 million. But you get the sense that a lot more teams are recognizing what's coming, and they're foreseeing how much it's going to cost. And they feel like if I can afford it, that's one thing. But if I can't, I've got to move on. Little surprised at that. I wonder how Tigers fans feel if it opens up the proverbial door to keep Alex Bregman. If they're not going to spend the money on Kyle Tucker, would they spend it on a 31-year-old third baseman? Well, it would be shorter term and less money because he's looking for 6 years, $200 million or so. They say that Houston has already made an offer to him, and it was not $200 million. It was more like 6 years, $156 million, and he scoffed at it. By him doing that, I immediately think, okay, $26 million a year is not enough. And maybe I assert the Tigers into this conversation way too frequently. Okay, it could be, but that's where we are. I mean, that's the team we follow. Do you think the Tigers are willing to surrender $26 million a year to Alex Bregman? If you think so, just remember this, it's not enough. If there's any place where he's going to accept a little bit lower of an offer, you would think it would be Houston because of a lot of different circumstances. You know, the guys he's playing with, the fact that he's been there, the team that originally drafted him, where he's comfortable there, so on and so forth. You would think $156 million would be enough, but he's got, at least he and his agent, they've got it set in their mind. They're going to make $200 million. The more you read about this, and you recognize what other teams need, so the other teams that are involved in a possibility of an Alex Bregman, the Yankees, for example, the Red Sox, for example, and yes, I know they have Rafael Devers, but you could always move him to second base. He's willing to do that. He has said that. He was a shortstop at LSU, not that you necessarily need a shortstop there per se. But overall, I mean, there are other attractive places to go. I think Detroit's attractive, but there are other attractive places to go where the money's going to be there and you're going to get a chance to win. All right. If you go to New York, you play alongside Judge and some of those players, you're going to get a chance to win. You go to Boston, they have made sure the commitment has been there that they're going to give you an opportunity to win. You look at what he said no to in Houston, it has to give you great pause and almost deflate you thinking that the Tigers are going to be on any conversation when it comes to Alex Bregman. All right, here's the other thing I wanted to touch on. Over the weekend, you saw that Travis Hunter, the outstanding two-way player for the Colorado Buffaloes, was the winner of the Heisman Trophy. It's a good debate between him and Ashton Genty, who is 132 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' rushing total. And Barry Sanders won it at Oklahoma State, won the Heisman Trophy. Immediately, I think it's almost, it's borderline unfair because of the number of games played, but whatever. I mean, Ashton Genty's had an unbelievable season. Said actually he thought he should have walked away with the Heisman. You can make a case for that, understandably so. I'm going to call myself out here, okay? Because as good as Travis Hunter is and is deserved, I actually thought while going in that Genty should win it. And if I had a vote, I probably would have voted for him. But actually, when I used to have my Heisman votes, I did a little bit more research than I did just thinking about going into it this past weekend. When I had my Heisman Trophy vote for a long period of time, I made it a point to talk to analysts and talk to coaches and talk to other players to see what their perspective was of that individual. It wasn't me talking with members of the media. If you go and you talk to a member of the media who covers that player on a regular basis, there is a bias. There's no doubt about that. Anybody who denies that just hasn't done it enough. I didn't think Dylan Gabriel would be in the conversation. I don't think people from out west get probably nearly enough pub as they probably should, although Travis Hunter is from out west. I sure didn't think it would be Cam Ward of Miami. Few losses there and a couple of them bad losses. And quite honestly, I don't even think he's the best quarterback in college football. So I thought it was a two-man race. And I thought originally, yes, the guy I would be voting for would be Ashton Jeanty. You look a little bit deeper and you realize, and this is a mind-blowing statistic that cannot be overlooked. Travis Hunter recorded a ridiculous amount of snaps, 1,443 snaps. We'll put that in perspective. That is 120 snaps per game. No other finalist, whether it be Ward, Gabriel, or Jeanty, no other finalist had more than 873 snaps. And that's surprising too, because they're quarterbacks, right? Now, obviously, Hunter plays both sides of the ball. It kind of accentuates just how important and how good he was to Colorado this year. I read an article over the weekend where somebody had said, well, Colorado was one of the more popular teams in all of college football. That shouldn't matter, okay? What should matter is what the guy does on the field of play. I don't care if Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush made USC super famous and a lot of people wanted to watch them. I cared about how they played more than anything else. Colorado a year ago was a team that a lot of people wanted to watch too, and they weren't very good, right? I think what matters most is what you're doing. And when you look at it as a wide receiver, and he won the Biletnikoff Award, as a wide receiver, he was top 6 in the nation in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns. And as a defensive player, according to Pro Football Focus, he was number 5 in passes defended, 15 passes defended, 11 pass breakups, and 4 picks. Now, obviously an All-American, but a first-team All-American as a defensive player, and second team as a wide receiver, and first team as an all-purpose player. I don't know how you argue that is one of the more impressive offensive and defensive and overall situations for a college player in recent memory. Like my hope is, and I know you were probably thinking the same thing back when Charles Woodson won it in 1997 when he beat out Peyton Manning and Randy Moss. When you look at dual threats, it's kind of like Shohei Ohtani, right? When Shohei Ohtani is as good as he was, Sergei Fedorov, when he was as good as he was playing offense and defense as a player, it's something that I don't think nearly gets enough recognition when it comes to hockey. When you can be the best two-way player in hockey, there's something to be said for that. That's exactly what Travis Hunter was. An amazing season by an amazing young player who is in all likelihood going to be a top 5 player chosen in the NFL draft, maybe the first overall pick. It shows you when you when you dive a little bit deeper into what a player has accomplished, they deserve, that's why it's important to be able to do that, especially when you have a vote. And I don't always think those who do those votings, especially with the Heisman, always get it right, but they got it right this year. So kudos to them. The last thing I wanted to touch on before we got out of here is we're noticing this more and more in college football, where guys are opting out of playing in bowl games, especially bowl games that quote unquote don't matter, and getting ready for the NFL. I get it. There's everybody and their brother is telling you, every advisor is telling you, hey, you know what? There's nothing that can be gained from this, which I would strongly disagree with, because it's easy for us, sitting back and saying, hey, don't get yourself hurt. Don't play in a game where you can get yourself hurt and ruin your draft stock. I don't know how many times that's happened, but it's the common theme that we just use now. It's like, I wouldn't play in it. Why? Because you could get hurt. You could get hurt at the combine, but then guys don't want to do the combine. And then fans will argue about that a little bit. They want to have their own personal pro day. That's ridiculous. On and on it goes. I get it for certain guys. I don't like it, but I get it for certain guys, especially if they're going to be first rounders. Donovan Edwards is opting out of the bowl game against Alabama. When Michigan plays Alabama in the ReliaQuest bowl game, he's opting out. He's second on the team in carries. He's second on the team in rushing yards. Nothing special there. Look, their offense was god-awful, but nothing special there. He gained 590 yards on the ground this year. He was second in rushing touchdowns with 4. Okay. It was one of the more disappointing seasons of any player. I believe at the beginning of the year, not just was he doing commercials, but I believe at the beginning of the season, he was a guy on the cover of College Football 25. It was Donovan Edwards. It was Travis Hunter, who obviously I just told you won the Heisman over the weekend, and Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers, who is going to be, I would guess, a first-round pick because there's a lot of teams that reach for quarterbacks. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a really good college quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a great pro. I don't think any of these guys, quite honestly. I wouldn't take a chance as a first-round pick on any of the quarterbacks coming out, to be honest with you, whether it be Sanders or Ward or Ewers or anybody. Anyway, even Gabriel, who I like a lot. Overall, Edwards, who had that memorable game against Ohio State, and what you thought was going to be one of those dual threat guys because he can catch the ball so well out of the backfield, had really good open end speed, hit the hole pretty hard, looked like a completely different player this year. So my question, as soon as I read this, was, would I draft him? Do you think he'll get drafted? I think he'll get drafted, but I think he's going to be a late round pick. How many running backs go into the NFL draft with those types of numbers and are asking in so many ways, asking NFL teams to remember 2 years ago instead of last year? And basically, in all likelihood, probably saying, well, everybody struggled. We weren't that great, so on and so forth. Do you think he's an NFL back? I don't.
I think he's got a shot. He's got a shot to be a productive back in the league.
But
not as a lock. I'm with you there. I don't think
he's got a shot. Yeah,
I think he'll be a day 2 pick.
Drafted has a shot. So
I think he'll be a day 2 pick. I think he'll either go second or third round.
Second or third? Okay.
Yeah, probably third.
We'll put lunch on this. I think he's later than that. I think
you're saying day 3.
When you look at his reel, on television, you put together reels. You don't put together resumes. You put together reels if you're looking for jobs. In radio, the same thing. In football, you look at his tape. Where do you think NFL scouts and NFL talent evaluators are looking at his tape? Do you think it's last year and the capabilities, or this year when he was shy from getting contact and to a certain extent almost, kind of crumbling a little bit as the contact was about to take place?
I do think some of the evaluators, some of the GMs, some of the scouts will give him some grace in that. I think some will. Some will understand that he didn't want to get hurt and the team wasn't very good. But there are others that, like you, you're probably in this boat.
A talent evaluator goes, I understand you don't want to get hurt.
I think some would understand, yes. Wow. I think others would think it's a huge red flag, and that sounds like that's the boat you're in.
Yeah, look, talent, you're in the NFL especially, the contact is coming. It's fast and furious. Those guys, if you're playing not to get hurt, that is a massive red flag.
I'm not justifying it.
Oh, I know you're not. If anybody writes that down and says, I understand he didn't want to get hurt, I don't know if I don't want that talent evaluation.
Maybe not so much that, but they would be more prone to look at 2 years ago instead of just last year. That's what I'm saying. They might give him some grace there, and they would evaluate him based on 2 seasons ago, not last season.
When he's playing in a good offense or running behind a good offensive line, that's what
he's productive.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. That's a probably better way to put it. I understand why you think that. For me, I would ask you this. Do you think he's an NFL back?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. I think he can be a backup. Yeah. He can play. He can get snaps in the league. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I don't view him as an NFL back. I look at, we'll use another Michigan back. Blake Corum is having a hard time breaking through against, Kyron Williams, play some downs. He catches, he runs with a certain aggression that you have to have in the NFL. I don't look at Donovan Edwards like that at all. There's a former Lions, and ironically enough, he's still playing. There's a former Lions running back by the name of Amir Abdullah. You talk about a guy who was injured, but Amir Abdullah, really graceful when he ran at Nebraska. Caught the ball well out of the backfield. Actually did so to a certain extent for the Lions as well, but just got hurt too often. I look at Donovan Edwards as a guy who almost shied away from contact this year. And I think that's a problem. And I think in order for him to make it in the NFL, he would have to be a guy who welcomes the contact and both not just run the ball, but after catch as well. I just didn't see that this year. Maybe I'll give you the credit. You're looking at it from 2 years ago, and that's where my head should go. I'm looking at what have you done lately, and maybe that's the wrong way to do it. But that's how I'm looking at it from him. And I don't think he was so good last year that it made me think this year he was a slam dunk day one or day two. I thought he had more to prove. And especially when you had the chance to seize the opportunity. You're backing up Blake Corum, that's one thing, right? You were overtaken by Khalil Mullings. You didn't earn that job. You were a secondary role, and you weren't very vital to that team at all. I don't see him as an NFL player. I do think he'll get drafted. I don't think he'll make it, and that's too bad because I root for all people coming out of the state of Michigan. But I just don't see it. Our thanks to you for your texts and your phone calls. Really appreciate it. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. here on X's and Bros. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday, everybody, and thanks for watching and listening.
It's time to go in the huddle.